This video is to explain why we train the way we do, or the rationale behind the way we train. Now, what I'm going to do is use this cup, and the liquid inside it represents training resources, so it could be time or other things. Now, when I was young, back in the 90s, and early MMA came out, I was primarily a kickboxer. That's all I'd do. So all my time and effort was spent in stand-up, in that particular style of it. I would often watch, early Shuto fights or whatever they were called, and I wasn't really impressed by the stand-up. Reason being is MMA is basically a triathlon. So as well as your stand-up, your training time and resources need to be split between, clinch work, or as we like to call it in self-defense, close quarter combat, and also ground work. Now, what people do need to understand about self-defense is we have so many more things that we need to cover. So as well as those three, we also, in a self-defense context, you really need to cover pre-fight. So pre-fight includes all the things like awareness and verbal de-escalation. We have to divide our time into post-fight. So we need to know all the the local laws and things like that pertaining to self-defense, just to make sure what we're doing isn't going to end us up incarcerated. In self-defense, there are so many other things that you need to cover. So as well as that, we have multiple attackers. Along with multiple attackers, we have knife defense, both static and dynamic, for knife attacks. Blunt weapons, so things like baseball bats. Firearms, depending on what part of the world you live in, determines how much of that you train as well. Third-party protection is a big one. Being able to look after your family. And improvised weapons is another. Using general items to be able to defend yourself. As well as that, some Krav Maga schools actually do grenade disarms. As you can see, we have to divide our time between all of these things. So that's a lot. So that's why you might look at some of our videos and go, wow, their boxing's terrible. And yeah, you know what? You're probably right, because if you compare us splitting it between all of these different options compared to one option, what a boxer does, of course it's not going to be as good. But amongst all these things as well, there are layers. So for example, if you're doing groundwork, you can do groundwork with weapons. You can do groundwork with multiple attackers. In the end, you have a multitude of cups for a whole variety of different things, because there are so many variables that need to be considered. So what do we do and how do we cover this? Because, to pour that one cup between all of these things, it's not really covering a lot. And that's true. So the way we get around this is, first of all, we have cheats. We have things, we apply concepts. Our training is conceptually based rather than technique based. What that means is we have a technique which covers a number of things rather than one specific technique for every little thing that may occur. For example, a sucker punch. Our defense for a sucker punch is exactly the same for, if they're attacking us the same way with a knife, if they're trying to grab us. We're killing three birds with one stone, essentially. And that's what we do with a lot of our training. Drill techniques would have the highest probability of success. So in our stand-up, we're not doing jumping, spinning back kicks, because, let's face it, you can't do them on a train or on a bus, and, you have to be a certain type of individual to be able to get them to work, and most people can't. We drill the most common attacks. So we study society and demographics and all that kind of thing, and have a look in CCTV footage and see what the most common attacks are occurring, and we base our training on that. So little things like firearms, soon we do a lot less of that. Knives are high on the list, multiple attackers are high on the list. If, you were just doing MMA for self-defense, you're missing a whole lot of things. And that's not to say some of the skills that you do don't cover some of those areas, but there's a whole lot more going on that you need to consider.